Hello and welcome to Conversations with AgWest Bio. Today I'm speaking with Jay Robinson from AgWest Bio and Lewis Collins from BioScout. AgWest Bio has linked with another company from across the globe to help bring a powerful technology into Canada's agriculture industry. Today we'll find out more about BioScout and how they might just change the way farmers handle crop diseases. Thank you both for joining me, Lewis and Jay. Lewis is coming all the way from Australia, so good morning to you. So let's just get right into it. Lewis, can you tell me about BioScout?
Yeah, sure. So BioScout is a company that has developed some really novel technology from university research. And what that's allowed us to do is actually see the airborne diseases that affect farmers and that are on the crop in real time and nearly 2 weeks before they're symptomatic on the crop. And this means we can tell growers not only where and what diseases are on the farm, but what to do about it as well.
I have a lot of technical questions, but I think I'm going to wait for a sec here. Jay, can you provide an insight into GAP and how it provides more capital to its portfolio companies?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Lewis, for joining us. We're excited to be working with you guys. And yeah, so GAP, or the Global Agri-Food Advancement Partnership, is a hybrid venture fund and incubator, but it's got a twist. We want to help make the Canadian agri-food ecosystem more competitive on the global stage through the adoption of innovation. And so, there's two words that guide us, which is beyond capital. So in addition to be able to make an equity investment, up to $1.5 million, or in some instances $2 million, we also provide access to a plethora of other services, which really center around, starting with, just under 14,000 square feet of labs and greenhouses. There's, just an assortment of toys and for our kind of crowd, fun toys when it comes to lab equipment and fermentation and all the analytical equipment that we need. And then we layer that with just world-class mentorships. And we really don't do cohorts. We don't do this short-term kind of 3-month accelerators. We believe that every company is unique. Every company has its individual challenges and individual opportunities. And so we work with those companies to really meet those unique kind of requirements. And warehouse companies for up to 4 years and really help them grow. And we're in it for the long haul, and we're in the trenches with them.
Can you tell me the relationship between AgWest Bio and GAP, and then how Voyage was a result of that relationship?
Yeah, it's a good question. So, AgWest, as an industry-based organization, has a mandate to grow the sector and the ecosystem within agriculture and food. And they were really the driving force and one of the main founding partners behind GAP, or the Global Agri-Food Advancement Partnership. AgWest had identified a void in the investment landscape when it came to companies looking to raise capital at that kind of past proof of concepts phase, needing to raise in excess of 500,000 to say roughly 2 million. And then it came to looking at it and saying, how do we, in addition to providing capital, what do they need that capital for? And we kind of unpacked that and realized that a lot of it needs to go into a greater investment thesis. So behind GAP is AgWest Bio as one of the core founding members, the Global Institute of Food Security, the Agri-Food Innovation Center, Innovation Place, and then a number of private industry partners. And it all came around this common vision. And then so Voyage really came out of an extension from that, where AgWest, again, looking at growing the cluster, acknowledge that we have a mandate of moving innovation through to commercialization, and part of that is seeding innovation into the ecosystem. And a big part of our mandate is how do we do that, provincially and nationally. But the other thing is sometimes we can't be the best at everything provincially and nationally. So if you can find the best things from somewhere else and in return make your own ecosystem stronger, how do we do that? So that's where we realized there's a lot of innovation that's already been scaled and adopted in other markets and other countries. And how do we bring them here so we're not reinventing the wheel and really kind of get ourselves up to speed in some areas where we may not be up to speed? So we realized, yes, there's capital needs, but also how do we mitigate those risks to get companies here and help them to have a soft landing and expedite their learning curve. So that's where, again, AgWest Bio partnered with the Saskatchewan Regional Economic Development Authority, or SREDA, to do that. And then obviously GAP came in as well as another partner. So between the three of us, that's how we support these voyage companies. And the companies, basically, we go around the world, look for the most promising teams with the best technologies, and then we will offer the opportunity to bring those companies in. No cohorts, no timeframes, and kind of a customized basis. It's not a one-fit-all program. And then we work with them on a customized agenda to bring them in.
And Lewis, can you tell me about your background and how BioScout kind of came to be?
Yeah, sure. So I guess I started my PhD doctorate at University of Sydney here in Australia in 2017. And that was looking at picking up wheat stripe rust using a drone and a bit of sticky tape. And then working out exactly different areas of a farm or a wheat belt region, how many spores we're picking up. Trying to automate that process and make it faster, because it's a lot of pathology groups across Australia. There's not many of us, and it takes a long time to get those samples. So we're looking at ways to make that faster. We had some really successful trials, and I was really excited to kind of commercialize the technology. I really wanted to bring some more people to make this kind of a tool that isn't just used for one disease, for one PhD, but something that can be used all across Australia and hopefully the world to help farmers detect disease earlier and manage it better. So that's how it started. As soon as we hit the ground trying to sell this thing, a naive kind of researcher realized it wasn't going to quite work with a drone. And a grower literally just said to me one day, "Look, Lewis, love the tech, but if you want to sell it, you're going to have to make it simpler and not a drone. And I'll give you $10,000. Just put it in a box, put it on a pole, and that's it. I'll just pay you for that." And that's what we did, and that's how BioScout really started as a company. We went from really trying to beg farmers to do trials to them coming to us, to agrochemical companies coming to us, to government. It was a real gate opener. And since then, it's really been all about making this thing work, not just one time in the lab or one time in a field trial, but all the time, every year, without any human intervention, like all good ag tech, I guess. And I think we're finally at a point where we've kind of raised quite a bit of money. We've got some great government support to go from a prototype to something that's commercially scalable, and that's where we're at right now.
So is the methodology behind this tech, has it been around for a little while, kind of in just the research areas? Is this kind of the first kind of commercialization of it?
Yeah, look, spore trapping has been used all for the last 50 years, since the 50s. So it's been used in a lot of disease epidemiology and biosecurity kind of research, but it's really struggled to go from that to a commercial application. And the technology is really, in terms of the actual air sampling, has been kind of stuck in the 50s. They use the same spore trap they did 2 generations ago. And not much has changed. Obviously the analysis part. So, now they use amazing genetic technology like PCR and immunoassays to get, right down to the race level disease strains. But obviously that process takes a long time. It's at least a month from, actually capturing it to getting it to the lab to running the tests. And so it's great for research and kind of this national level biosecurity, but on a grower level, by the time you get any feedback, if you get any at all from the government, it's far too late to do anything about it. And so what we've done with our technology is condense that period down from a month to 6 hours. And so you can actually see what's on your crop before it's symptomatic within 6 hours. So it's just a whole different ball game. And what that allows farmers to do is actually apply the fungicides at the right time and the right place, which is exactly where that optimal application time is.
That seems pretty incredible, kind of condensing an entire lab down into a small box that you just put in a field somewhere.
Yeah, it sounds good. It's a lot of complicated processes all in that box.
So from Australia to Saskatchewan, Jay, can you tell us how AgWest Bio, someone based in Saskatchewan, was able to locate and build a relationship with a company literally on the other side of the world?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I think, going back into AgWest is an industry-based organization, and our mandate at the very basic level is to grow the ecosystem of ag and food within Western Canada. And to do that, there's a number of different ways. You grow organically, but again, coming back to kind of that shared mandate with GAP is this kind of adoption of innovation. How do you move innovation through to commercialization? And ultimately, where does innovation come from? And if we work in a vacuum, we're only going to have one-minded thought, right? So there's innovation that happens all over the world, and AgWest, our team, has global networks. Karen Churchill, the CEO of AgWest, myself, several others have worked internationally, both for multinationals, other venture capital groups. We always syndicate deals. We're always on the lookout, and we have partnerships everywhere else. And I mean, to be honest, a lot of it is hard work, right? We're out there looking for the best teams with the most promising technologies. And when we find them, you want to get them there. And if we feel that the team's great, the technology's great, and there's a natural fit to the ecosystem here, and for the company themselves, then we work to do that. So it really does come back to that AgWest, thinks globally, acts locally, and relies on that greater kind of international network and partnerships we have, and just good old elbow grease to find the deal flow and get the technology in.
So if I could take you just a step before that for your kind of search process, like what does that radar look like for, because you've clearly got long-reaching influence. So what does the radar look for searching for those companies? How does that search start for these companies?
Yeah, I guess there's a multiple-pronged attack, if you will, and there's no one course of action. It's not like there's a blueprint that we run on, and different venture groups and different investment firms have different approaches. So, for us, obviously, the easiest, sometimes the most streamlined process is an introduction from a trusted ally, so another venture group that you do deals with, a corporate, private industry partner that may be looking at something, and they're early, and maybe they want to put in some money and they want you to come in, and those things are if the technology is good and the team's good, those things are relatively straightforward when you've got those kind of nice intros. But stepping back from that, the first thing is we need to keep our ear very close to the ground with industry, because we need to make sure that we are looking to solutions to real world problems. And as ag and food has become kind of a hotbed of investment, there's a lot of adjacent people moving into ag and food, which is fantastic, because you get this kind of complete open-minded landscape of people coming in with no kind of predispositions of what it should look like. But at the same time, if that's disconnected from the end user, they can be providing a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, or a solution that's very impractical. So it really does start with the end user and identifying the problem, and then building our way back from there. And so, we can, once we've identified the problem, our partners in that deal flow can come through any of those methods. Can be through, like I said, warm introductions, corporate partners, other ag tech accelerators from around the world, where we have very complementary kind of bilateral relationships, if you will, friends, partners, professional networks, and just, like say, turning over a lot of rocks. So universities and academic institutions are another great resource that we build a lot of relationships with. And it is, I know in all business, relationships are important, but I'd say in agriculture and food, it may be even more so than other sectors.
So Lewis, you've made quite a bit of progress with BioScout since you started the company. Can you just talk about some of your biggest achievements since then?
We've had some really great successes in the last 18 months, where we've picked up some diseases that we weren't even expecting to pick up on growers' farms. And when we get that, and we can tell them, look, there's this really unexpected disease, can you go look for it? We're not even sure, is it there? And they find it, and they can isolate it and apply protectives, and then we prevent that outbreak. I think that's some of our best success stories, and something that gets me out of bed every morning, having those chats and finding out those problems. So that's probably our every day. That's part of the celebratory successes. But I guess in terms of big successes. Being recognised as one of the top young Australian scientists of the year by the government. I think it was last year. It was really great, and winning as a company, kind of the Australian, as they call it, agripreneur of the year. That was really good too.
So Jay, between your role at AgWest Bio and GAP, you must see quite a few things come across your desk, and I'm sure all these achievements and recognition coming from these companies, certainly stick out when they come across your desk. But what about BioScout made it so exciting that you were willing to work with them?
Yeah, that's a great question, and there's a lot of good companies, and it's the ones that stand out that you really want to work with. And I'd say it starts with the team, right? It starts with the people, and when you interview a team and you work with a team that's so passionate and also accomplished like Lewis and his team. And I mean, he just said something which just validates his perfect timing for this question. So you asked him what his biggest accomplishments were. In my mind, from the time I spent with him, there's 20 other ways I would have answered that. But for Lewis to say, our biggest accomplishments are with the grower and solving their problems, that's exactly the kind of team you want to be working with. It's not saying, oh, we've raised money, or oh, we've moved our tech forward, or oh, we've got some of the biggest investments and revenue coming from some of the biggest vineyards in the country. It's no, we're solving real world problems for a grower. And if that is your mantle and your North Star, that's fantastic. And that's exactly why we're excited to be working with a group like this. And the rest of it layers on top of that, right? You look at the technology, you look at the scalability, the team's validated. Like I say, that the technology is so disruptive, and for us, it's about the market traction, which just goes to show that it is solving a real world needed problem in a way that's practically that's adopted in a practical way at the field level. And from a business model where we get excited, you can take this in so many different directions without having to really get too diluted from your main core competency, which is really exciting.
So Lewis, to come from Australia, that's no light undertaking. Can you explain what made you apply to the Voyage Program and why it attracted you and what you hope to get out of it?
Yeah, well, I guess as Jay mentioned, you've got to turn a lot of rocks and find out every opportunity. And so when Jay kind of reached out and we started talking, Canada's been on our radar for a long time. We're starting to look internationally now that we're starting to get a good traction here in Australia, and obviously Canada's a really interesting market. We share a lot of similar cultural values and institutions, and it's almost Australia but snowier in some ways. So yeah, it was really good for us, but the market as well, right? Like Australia's pretty dry, and actually one of the worst markets for fungal diseases and fungicides. Well, Canada actually does spend, the market's much bigger for that type of things. And I think that's what we were looking at, particularly. And, obviously want to go to North America, and Canada's just a great entry point for that. I think that in terms of diseases, they're similar to Australia, but a little bit different, which allows us to increase our range of diseases that we can detect without having to completely relearn the model of disease detection that we've established here in Australia. And yeah, I think those are the major reasons. I'm also looking forward to seeing how our devices operate in some chilly Canadian winters as well.
Yeah, I'm assuming probably an 80 degrees Celsius difference at one point.
Yeah, right. It's crazy what you guys have to experience sometimes.
So I have a technical question for you. When you take your product out of Australia into Canada, are the diseases and the kind of situations it's going to be in, is it pretty transferable, or is there alterations you'd have to do to sense the environment in Canada versus Australia?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. So even here in Australia, this is some exciting research that we're hoping to publish, is that you can actually observe differences in the morphological spores, even in different regions in Australia. So, Botrytis cinerea, which affects a whole bunch of different crops, but we focus that in viticulture. We can see that vineyards in South Australia are quite different to the botrytis that we see here in the eastern coast. And that's not really something anyone's really talked about before. And so when we go to Canada, there will be differences, but the AI is really capable, and we can actually start training the networks based off these local geographies. And that's something we'll be hopefully doing in the GAP program as well, and Voyager. And yeah, so there is differences, but the actual core technology and the sampling technology is very similar. And we actually can adjust different parameters on the fly in the software on the device to capture different spores and different disease targets to get the highest specificity. I guess in terms of the big differences though is the way you guys kind of grow wheat and broadacre cropping. And so we have to kind of adjust our post-detection algorithms to work out, well, we've picked up these spores, we've picked up these weather conditions, and then we'll be working with growers to work out what growth stages they're at to work out exactly the timing for the fungicides to maximize those kind of ROI calculations for our growers. So that's kind of the big market difference.
So, sorry, I have to follow up with another technical question because I just find the product really interesting. So you said you can just adjust kind of the AI to sense whatever you need to. Is this a completely digital process?
So there's a lot of so it's all microscopy. So it's a lot of moving lenses and optics inside the box. Which we've digitized obviously. Yeah. So the AI, once we capture the imagery, it's all digital. But yeah, there's a lot of mechanical componentry, and even in the air sampling unit itself, which is inside the box, we can adjust parameters like how close the collection surfaces are to the inlets, and all these kind of aerobiological considerations. You have to factor into specific diseases, so we can adjust those things depending on the time of day, depending on the diseases we want to target. We can adjust those things in real time. And so it's almost like a airplane wing. We can adjust kind of the different parameters to achieve that airflow and capture the spores that we want to capture.
So Liz, can you talk about the customized and tailored approach to GAP and how it's helping you navigate the ecosystem?
Yeah, well, it's I guess it's still very early days. We're planning out exactly what we're going to be doing over there, but obviously working with Jay to kind of maximize that time, because as we know, it's quite a fair distance. But we're looking at getting to talk to growers all over Saskatchewan and the prairies, and also hopefully in Vancouver as well when it comes to viticulture and wine grapes. And so that's what I'm really focused on, is kind of what are the problems that Canadian growers face compared to Australian? What are the disease pressures they face? And obviously that is different. And I'm really keen to learn about that, and then also get my hands dirty with some scientists and discuss kind of what are the scientific considerations and what's going over in Canada in terms of aerobiological science, and work out any collaborations and work we can do over there too.
And do you believe that GAP is helping mitigate those risks of coming to a new market and increasing your chances of success?
Oh, 100%. This will be the first kind of international market we get to, and without having GAP, I don't know how we'd do it. Having the support structures there to meet the right people, to have the right equipment and space to actually have a base of operations to talk to people from, that's really exciting for us.
Awesome. So a question for both of you here. So BioScout's been adopted, as you said, with Australian vineyards most recently for broadacre wheat. How does this transfer to the Canadian marketplace?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can, I think for us, like Lewis, you already kind of alluded to this, right? Like this. Well, I love what you said. Like in a lot of ways, Canada's like Australia, just a little snowier, right? And there's certainly some big differences when it comes to some of the agronomic practices. But there's also a lot of overlap, and I think in a lot of ways the market channel in Australia is fairly consolidated, as it is here in Canada, and that creates challenges, but it also creates a lot of opportunity. And one of the things that I really liked about BioScout, which I think will really resonate here, is the way that you've articulated value that resonates with the end user. Again, you're so focused on that end user, so and the end user, whether it's the grower or an agronomist or a crop distribution company, or it depends, right? But I think what really kind of drew us in addition to the team, was the ability to articulate that. And it's yes, you can get in and tell a grower within 6 hours what diseases they have, and get it in 2 weeks before there's official disease. And when you take that, there's so many different ways that you've done a great job at articulating that to the grower, that, whether it be a saving in chemical, which is a cost saving, which you can transfer that over to yield loss. You can put that down to the sustainability because you're using less. I mean, you just tick all these boxes, right? But it does come down to the fact it has to work and it has to be proven, and you've done that there. And now the real devil in the details is duplicating what you've done here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I see a lot of the similarities, in the broadacre cropping from here to Canada, and the differences are really interesting for us. And then, obviously environmental challenges as well. Like in Australia, we've survived bushfires, we've survived floods, and even a cyclone up in North Queensland. But I think there's even more challenges to come in terms of working out what the extremes of agriculture across the world. And yeah, I can't think of a better place to kind of test that than Canada, because as you say, those similarities give us the confidence to go over there, and it's not a completely different environment.
And it's the low-hanging fruit too, right? In the sense that, you're already doing wheat. That's a major market here. A lot of the diseases you're looking at are the same diseases here. If you're looking at viticulture, we talked about BC and Kelowna and Penticton and botrytis and powdery mildew and downy mildew. They're all the same diseases that we face. And there may be different strains, right? But, overall, there's just that, no pun intended, but the low-hanging fruit. And then to move into things like canola and sclerotinia and some things is because you've got the platform built. It's now leveraging the platform, but the ability to be able to hit the ground running in some of on just the significant amount of work you've already built is just a great opportunity. And I think that in addition to this, the one thing I should mention is a lot of the same private industry partners that you're working with in Australia also have major interest here and big presences here. So it's a good way to, sometimes the left hand doesn't talk to what the right hand is doing. But if you're able to get into the door here and say like, hey, we're working with your counterparts here, it just expedites that process. So.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah. And canola, I think, is a really interesting one for us because, Canada's done some great work already. You guys have got great scientists, and they've got some great studies based on spore trapping and fungicide timing and for canola specifically. And, we've managed to replicate some of that here in Australia with canola and canola blackleg. But, and that's one of our strongest models for diseases. And unfortunately, Australia doesn't have the biggest canola market. But, it's very exciting to bring that technology and bring it back to Canada and work with the same scientists to see if there's potential there.
What are you most excited for about the future of this relationship?
Yeah, for me, it's, I think, again, having the support, to go over to Canada, to go to our first international market is just amazing and a really great opportunity. And I think hopefully there's an Australian or group that does the same thing for Canadian growers, because it's just such a great opportunity. I think being able to start having a presence in Canada and as a market that we could establish ourselves really firmly in and be part of that ecosystem. We're really excited to kind of expand with the program.
Yeah, and from our end, I'd start by saying, as an investor, I always feel like, I like to think that we can be a servant leader, and ultimately we get to stand on the shoulders of giants, right? And giants being the entrepreneurs, and if we can do that, and we can help them, use that kind of joint wisdom as a team to really help mitigate pitfalls and expedite development, and just really grow innovation to just really achieve great things. In that kind of family environment, that's the way we're going to win.
Well, Jay and Lewis, thank you both very much for being here.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
And thank you very much for watching.